Hi everyone, Tyler Manion here, NPC and IFBB Pro League Vice President, and this will be your Men's Open Mr. Olympia recap. So we had a ton of great competitors this year. I really think this has been the deepest the Men's Open division has been in quite a long time. First, I'm going to go through with the top two. Obviously, it was very close between Samson and Hadi. We'll break it down pose for pose. Then afterwards, I'll review some of the other guys in the top six. So first up is the front double bicep pose. Samson and Hadi both have very, very strong front double bicep poses. For me, Samson's front double has improved show to show and year over year. His arms have come up considerably, both the biceps and the triceps. His whole inner arm is very good now, in my opinion. As you see, he has nice V taper going into a nice small waist. His waist control and ab control was very good at this show. Then you move into the lower body, and Samson obviously has some of the best legs and the best quads in the open division. Very good overall balance with this pose. The one thing I always said about Samson in this pose is, yes, could his lats be a little bit more dramatic? Could you have a little bit more of a taper? Yes, but I think that's increased dramatically. Now for Hadi also has a very good front double bicep, solid arms into a very pronounced V taper into a nice small waist. And then Hadi always has great legs from the front that are very conditioned. However, for me at this show, I feel like his legs overall, not just in this pose, but overall, were a little bit downsized. And even though the top to bottom is very good, I still think being downsized throws off that perfect balance just a little bit for him. And for that reason, even though Hadi's taper is a little bit more dramatic, I think the overall balance of the pose, all the body parts flowing together, for me, I give it to Samson to make it 1-0. Next up is the front lat spread pose. For me, this is Hadi's weakest pose. As you see here, his waist obviously looks wider in this pose compared to his front double bicep pose. You can see he still needs more thickness to the chest. Obviously, he has detailed chest, but he needs more thickness to the chest. And the overall roundness to his outer arms and shoulders is very good, but when you compare it to someone like Samson, you see the difference here. Again, with the legs, good conditioned quads from the front, but a little bit downsized for me. Now you go to Samson. Samson has very, very round and thick and full outer arms and shoulders. His chest is extremely thick. You see striation and detail in his chest. This pose, in the past couple of shows, you could see he was having a little problem with his midsection. It would be a little bit distended. Here, both Friday and Saturday, it was not at all. The way he hits this pose, very, very dramatic V taper. He really gets his lats out very well here. And again, you go down into the lower body. The quads are crazy full. We saw clear separation this time. The balance from the top to bottom makes this one of his strongest poses, in my opinion. So obviously, being one of Hadi's weaker poses to Samson's arguably strongest, I think this was a clear shot for Samson to make it 2 poses to 0. Next up is the side chest pose. So when we look at Hadi, again, one of his weaknesses, I would say, if he has one, is he needed more size to his legs from the side. Even at his best, which in my opinion was the Arnold Classic this year, the Arnold Classic US, you could still see he could still use a little bit more of that thickness to the side leg. So here the legs were down a little bit, and even really his overall conditioning, which is Hadi's trademark, is the striations through his chest and obviously the very, very detailed midsection. For me, we saw that Hadi's chest was not as detailed this time around, both on Friday and on Saturday. He just was lacking that trademark skinless striation chest, and he needs that because his chest is on the flatter side. Now, again, shoulders and arms were solid. The whole pose is still a very solid pose, but he was going up against an all-time best Samson. It's not the front lat spread, it's the side chest for Samson's strongest pose. Arms and shoulders, very full, very big, very round. Chest, extremely full. Also seeing detail and striation through it. Midsection, flat and in check. Side leg, very dramatic. Quad to hamstring balance, hamstring drop. We see the lines in it. We see the separation. This pose shows off the overall muscularity of Samson and really is a pose where I think you see the massive size difference between these two competitors. So for me, another clear pose for Samson to make this 3 poses to 0. Next up is the back double bicep pose. And surprisingly, Samson brought this pose up a lot. You see from the back, he has crazy hamstrings. They were separated. They were detailed. Samson's probably someone that's never going to get crazy separated glutes, but you still see the condition that he was in, even with the glutes here. The back of his arms and shoulders improved a lot. We see the bicep peak. We see all the detail and separation in his arms. His shoulders are the best they ever looked. Moving into, which was once his weakest body part, his back, he improved the taper and dramatically improved the depth and thickness of his back. So again, top to bottom balance, very, very good for him. Now here for Hadi, I think this is where we saw that it wasn't Hadi in his normal self, because normally his back double bicep is very strong. It was probably his most improved pose from last year's Olympia to the Arnold. So it was a little bit surprising to see that from the back here, we didn't see the same as we saw on Samson, the roundness and the separation and the fullness with the shoulders and the arms. And then the back itself, he was actually a little bit soft. So we didn't see that separated, grainy, dense, hard look, which he's always harder from the front than he is from the back. But this time, we can notice a softness in this back double bicep pose. Go down into the lower body. Obviously, he was in shape, but his leg width and his hamstring detail definitely could have been better. We've seen it better before, and this was a pose where we saw that Hadi, I don't think, was at 100% of his best. So, very surprisingly to me, I ended up giving this pose to Samson. 4 poses to 0. Next up is the back lat spread pose. So the back lat spread is one of Hadi's strongest poses. Even though his back looked softer than normal in his back double bicep, the amount of thickness that he really carries in his back shines through even when he's not at his best in this pose. Very, very wide lats, very thick. We still saw the detail in the lines in the back here. Again, the lower body has been better, but it was in shape. We could see the hamstrings. The leg width was solid. I think this was one of Hadi's strongest poses on the day. Now for Samson, again, lower body is in, very big, separated, look great. The back itself actually improved a lot. I thought he was very comparable with not only Hadi, but also Derek as well in this pose. Even when he was hitting this pose, to me, I still feel like he could pull those lats out just a little bit more. It's the best he ever hit the pose. It's the best his back ever looked, but it still feels like there's something more there, that he could give himself more of that width in that illusion. But as you can see, we saw the separation and we see the thickness and the depth to his back. This pose has improved tremendously for him, but with how strong it still was for Hadi, I gave this pose to Hadi to make it 4 poses to 1. Next up is the side tricep pose. So Samson in the side tricep pose, I think, was just doing himself a little bit of a disservice with his leg placement. He has crazy legs from the side. You want to show that size with the same placement that he has in the side chest. When you place your legs this way, you really take away that hamstring and the hamstring drop when you have it the way he does. Now, I don't know the reason, but I would think the reason he did this is because flexibility-wise, it was really hard for him to keep his upper body upright before, to really be able to extend the tricep and also keep his midsection flat, and we saw the abs. So upper body-wise, I thought his positioning was great for this pose, but lower body-wise, it was not. Then also, obviously, we posed these guys a lot of times, and he wasn't even always able to get into this pose the best way possible. Sometimes his upper body still wasn't upright. He was still leaning a little bit forward. And really, when he was doing that, lose detail, lose size, lose fullness. Now, for Hadi, the side tricep is always a very strong pose for Hadi. Why? Because we see all the detail in his midsection. His chest is still striated. Not as much as normal, but we still see the detail there. The side leg shows off the conditioning. And for him, it's still very balanced upper and lower body here. I think because of the detail that was shown in this pose, Samson kind of taking away some of the detail and fullness, which would be his advantage here, I gave this pose to Hadi to make it 4 poses to 2. Next up is the abdominal and thigh pose. Now, Samson looked great this year in his ab and thigh. Again, like I said, he was having some trouble controlling the midsection at previous shows. Here he was not. The midsection was dialed in. The abs were clear. The lines were deep. He has great quads. Overall, he has very nice V-taper flowing into that nice tight waist here. So from the top of his hands all the way down, very balanced, very strong overall pose. However, he's going against Hadi, whose ab and thigh pose is the best in the IFBB Pro League. Hadi's still very strong, all the detail through his midsection, great taper. Quads are still conditioned, they're still there. For this pose, for me, Hadi still has a nice overall balance because in this pose, you're not expanding the lats all the way out, right? So it doesn't really look like any imbalance. Still just such a super strong pose for him that even though Samson improved this pose tremendously, you can still see a little bit of the size difference for him as well. I give this pose to Hadi to make it 4 poses to 3. Then last up would be, your favorite most muscular pose, both hitting basically the same pose, except Hadi hits his most muscular with his knuckles together. Samson grabs the wrist. Now, again, here, I think it was a pose that surprised me because normally Hadi is very, very tough to beat in this pose because of the detail through his chest, because of the detail in the midsection. Basically a lot of his strengths are on display in this pose. The way he hits it, he's still able to be super wide as well from shoulder to shoulder and have that muscularity displaying in the outer arms, the shoulders. But Samson finally nailed his conditioning. Was he the hardest guy on stage? No, but again, the chest is bursting full. We're still seeing striations. The size and the roundness of the shoulders and the arms. We see the detail and still the separation to his abs. Plus, with his lower body and being as big and separated as it was. It's the most muscular pose for a reason, and this displayed how big Samson truly was at this show. You see the size difference between both of these guys. For me, even with Hadi having a little bit extra detail, Samson had much more size and still good detail, made me give Samson this pose 5 poses to 3. So as you can see, there were some clear shots for each guy, but there was also some very, very close poses. I mean, the front double bicep, very close pose. The back lat spread, very close pose. The most muscular, very close pose. So as you see, the judges were very split on both Friday and Saturday. I think the difference for me was that Samson came back even better on Saturday night, which is also an improvement for him as well. He hasn't always done that, even at shows he's won before. He's kind of basically stayed the same most of the times that he did well. Some of the times he came back just a touch worse. This time he came back much, much better. Testament to Hadi as well. I think Hadi also came back better on Saturday night. But for me, going pose by pose, I think Samson was able to edge him out, on both nights. But 2 very, very great competitors. They both had amazing years. Hadi ended up beating him 2 times at the beginning of the year. Samson now figured it out and took home the Mr. Olympia title. And I can't wait to see these 2 guys, going toe-to-toe for the next couple of years. Now, in 3rd place, we had our reigning Mr. Olympia, Derek. Some comments for me about Derek would be that it looks like his upper body definitely got bigger, and it looks like he lost some of his leg size, even from last year. So if you would look at comparison pictures of Derek's legs from last year to this year, I think you would see that some of the quads, I think, just got dieted away. His side leg was not nearly as big and as impressive as it was last year. And even from the back, where his hamstrings and his conditioning is really shining through, that leg width wasn't quite the same as it was the year prior. I think that caused a pretty big imbalance between his upper and his lower body. And when we're looking at him compared to the top 2, I think that kind of put him out of the discussion. His upper body, he made improvements in certain areas. You could see a little bit more detail and fullness to the chest. I think, the arms and the shoulders as well. Obviously, his back got even better, I think, than it was the prior year. But the back double bicep, he posed it perfectly. The back lat spread, he has a very hard time of keeping that open, when we're posing them a lot. And in some of the shots, I'm sure, there's some pictures, there's videos. In some of the shots you're seeing, he's not even getting it out fully. When he hits it right, he still has the best back lat spread on stage. But when it's not hit right, Hadi's and even Samson's were looking better than him on this day. Another thing Derek really needs to work on is more separation and more detail to the midsection. I also think he was having a little bit of trouble controlling his midsection, specifically on the side chest and side tricep poses. You could see the stomach just sticking out a little bit every single time he hit both of those side poses. And really for him going forward, I think it is making sure he gets that size in his legs back. He needs to have more upper to lower body balance. The upper body size-wise is great. Now it's just really focusing on the details. Keep bringing out the details from the front, the arms, the shoulders, the chest, and really, really focus now on the midsection, getting those abs better. You want to have it so you don't have poses that you know you're not going to win against these top guys. So for me, I think the ab and thigh would be the number one focus. You need to focus on improving that. The second one would be the front lat spread. We want to see more of that thickness and more of that detail shining through there. So having a better midsection and more detail in the upper body is going to really help that a lot. And then the most muscular as well, I think making sure the legs come up and the detail shining through all throughout that upper body from the front can make it a much stronger pose. In fourth place, we had Martin. I think Martin was the surprise of the show. I think he made some great improvements literally just from New York until now. As we see, he has crazy, crazy legs. They're separated, they are full from the front, from the side, and from the back. They are crazy impressive. Upper body wise, I think he has improved a ton. You see on the front double bicep pose, his arms themselves, I think, came up. He has more detail to those inner arms right there. And his taper definitely got better for the front double. The front lat, I think he just needs to work on his mobility more. You can see that fullness through the outer arms, the shoulders, and the chest. But he has a hard time of really getting those lats spread out to create the taper that he needs. Side chest, super strong pose. Back double bicep, very full, very bubbly. But he just needs to add more width to this pose. That would be my main critique for Martin is width in the front lat, width in this back double, and width in the back lat spread. If he adds more width, he can turn these poses into a big time strength for himself. Obviously, like I said, the legs from the back, the hamstring detail, the conditioning, the leg width is really, really good. The back lat spread, I still think you can see he can hit it and he can add more thickness and depth to his back with the back lat spread. Want more of that 3D look from the upper body, especially when his lower body is so dominant and so impressive. Going through his ab and thigh, extremely impressive. You see the detail, you see the small waist and the V taper, and his most muscular is one of the most impressive on stage with the muscularity, the conditioning, and the fullness that he displays from top to bottom. I think he announced himself as a dangerous force into the upper echelon here in the Pro League, and he has a very, very exciting future going forward. Next up is Andrew Jacked. So for me, Andrew on Friday definitely wasn't conditioned enough. I don't think overall that this was Andrew's best package. You know, I judged him myself in Texas. I think he brought a more impressive look to Texas. He really needed to improve on what he looked like in the finals in Texas when he dropped some of the water that he had in prejudging. And the conditioning definitely needed to shine through here, but I just don't think they were able to do that. Obviously, he's very, very impressive in a lot of poses, the front double, the front lat spread, the ab and thigh, but he was even lacking the detail and the separation that he normally has through his abs and midsection, which is a big, big strength for him. I think his legs have come up, but from the front, he can still use more separation. That's going to make the legs appear to be bigger as well. So I think that comes with conditioning too, but he needs deeper separation from the front and the legs. From the sides, he really, really needs size to his side leg. He needs more hamstrings for overall balance. He needs a lot more of that. But I also think even the quad itself from the side could definitely be a little bit better. We don't see that density and that size that we're seeing on the guys that placed ahead of him there. I also think for how round and full he has of chest and arms and shoulders, even the upper body isn't displayed quite right. So all of his strengths are really shown. He really needs to work on posing a lot because it's doing himself a disservice with the strengths that he does have. So it takes away from some of the weaknesses that he's going to need to work on. The back double bicep, I think, he was pinching a little bit in the back double bicep. He could still pose that a little bit better, even though you see his back has improved. When he's pinching through his traps, he's not opening up his lats all the way, which would create an even crazier taper. You see he can still improve on his legs from the back and the hamstrings as well here. Back lat spread, I don't think he hits his pose right either. He kind of stays too upright, does not get the lats all the way out. Maybe he's even rounding them forward a little bit too much. I'm not sure. His shoulders forward a little bit too much. But we're not seeing the taper and the thickness that we need to see there as well. The side tricep is the second side pose that he really, really needs to work on. I think it could be much better, but in the upper body and obviously the lower body. And then from the front, ab and thigh is very strong, especially when he's in the proper condition and has that separation and detail in the midsection. Favorite most muscular, I don't think he should be hitting anything with hands on the hips. This is a very, very hard most muscular to hit because a lot of guys can't keep their lats all the way out. So we're really seeing gaps in your physique when you're not doing this. It makes you look narrow. For such a big guy, he should be making himself look as big as possible and really, really accentuating his strengths. So a lot of posing work, I think, needs to be done for him. And he still has such an impressive physique that the day that he dials everything in, even just the conditioning, he is still a very, very big danger to every single person that placed above him at this show. So this definitely wasn't Andrew's best, but when Andrew does hit his best, you know, everyone could be in trouble because that's the kind of physique that he has. Last up is Hunter Labrada. So for Hunter, I think he brought his best ever physique on Friday night. You can see all the added size and density that he brought. The main things that he would need to work on are more fullness and thickness to his chest. And the biggest thing for him, especially from the front, is the midsection. Now, I think he's done a good job of improving the midsection, but he still needs more separation and deeper abs because it, you know, can throw off his look in some of these front poses and against guys that have very, very good midsections. That is, you know, definitely a weakness that gets exposed. His back has come up a lot. I still think he can continue to improve it to really make it a strength where he can start beating out some other competitors. But overall, the conditioning that he brought, and also I want to say that his posing conditioning improved a ton. Even on Friday night when, you know, we were doing the 4th through 8th place call out, we posed these guys a lot. And I have to say, even Martin started to sweat and break a little bit at the end. Hunter never did, and I think that's what made it so close in the scoring between Martin, Hunter, and Andrew on Friday because Hunter never cracked. His conditioning actually seemed to get better, and he never faltered on any posing. So Friday night was definitely his best performance. Saturday night, he did not bring that same conditioning and that same look to the stage. Basically, we just didn't see the detail, didn't see the pop, didn't see the separation that we needed to from his physique. And that's what ended up dropping him to a pretty consensus 6th place on Saturday, which is why the scores ended up the way they did. But overall, I think he's on the right track and he's doing the things to make himself, again, very competitive with every guy that placed above him at this show. Overall, I think the Men's Open is heading in the right direction. It's getting better every year. And all 6 guys that I've reviewed are constantly improving and trying to bring their best. And it's what makes this division so exciting.